Ryan, thank you so much for being able to meet me for it. It's kind of funny. I've done a lot of interviews at conventions. Have not done that in a while because then even when we were kind of slowly returning back to doing in-person conventions, it's I had a lot of my friends be like, well, they want to do an in-person interview, and I'm like, I would imagine an in-person interview is somehow less touchy than like going to a convention in terms of signing stuff, trading things all the time.
Of course, yeah. I mean, it's all got its own inherent risks, but yeah, I'm happy to be here, of course.
So just in case anyone's living under a rock or is not a big nerd like everyone else around us right now, who are you? What's like your summary for yourself?
Voiceover actor for about 20 years. I started as Staccato in Digimon Tamer Season 3, and then most recently I think people know me as Monokuma from the Danganronpa games, and Octagawa from Bungo Stray Dogs, but I mean I've done Naruto and Bleach and Durarara.
You've been all over
the place.
But yeah, so the funny thing is, especially I think for like a lot of actors that like had a lot more tenure for it, when you have like those, you have multiple roles.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, I'm known for just this.
Right.
Stuff like that for it. So is that ever kind of like a weird one of like, you never really know what someone's going to instantly recognize you for? Or is like one like more of a standout than others? Because like for me personally, I would recognize you just as much for Tamers as I would for Digimon, just because I grew up through both of those.
It definitely has to do with the age of the people. Mm-hmm. Although a lot of younger kids now are seeing Digimon Tamers like second or third generation. You know what I mean? Their parents are showing it to them. And it also seems to be cyclical. Like right now, because of Danganronpa Decadence coming out, it seems that everyone knows me as Monokuma.
Yeah, the royalty checks are coming in. Getting cash in the...
Yeah, right. You know they're sending me Spike Chunsoft sending me nothing.
You know what? I was so cynical of that release. I was almost going to be like, will the English cast return for them? Because the rights thing is such like a disaster for it. But it's at least good for that because yeah, you've already got to experience the fun thing of and all the other video game Danganronpa people of how that immediately came out, and then an entirely separate cast who's not related to you guys for it, which
for the anime.
Yes. So with the anime, it was one of those funny things of unless you were Bryce, everyone else got to be like, whoa, which one were you in and which one were you in?
Totally, it's really interesting, and I don't, none of us know the reason necessarily for that. Different studio, different group of actors, who knows? Monokuma it's not the easiest part to voice.
No, yeah.
So in the beginning, I wasn't that upset that I wouldn't have to do it every week, you know what I mean? But now that I'm doing conventions, I'm doing more Monokuma now than I ever did recording the video games.
Is that like a hard thing on your voice?
It's not really, because it's kind of like above what's called like a break or so it's kind of like up in the upper register. But over a course of like talking at conventions for like 3 or 4 hours, I definitely feel it in my voice, today. But for recording the video game, I think we did either 2-hour or 4-hour sessions, and it wasn't difficult at all.
Because if I'm remembering right, because I've talked to a couple other people from the cast of specifically just the game, and 1 and 2 were pretty much back-to-back recordings, right?
They were close. They were close to each other, and that was 10 years ago, and right. And then the third game, which is Trigger Happy,
V3.
That came out more recently. So I kind of thought that Danganronpa and Monokuma were gone at that point, and then I was really happy for that to happen. And then that was still a while ago. That V3 happened a while ago. And then for some reason, I started my TikTok. I was in New York, and I didn't know what TikTok was. I knew what it was, but I was on TikTok. And I made a little stick puppet out of a cutout for Monokuma. And I had him going all over Times Square and commenting on the shows and all that stuff. And all of a sudden, I've got like 100,000 views on TikTok. I'm like, well, this could be a fun thing. So I started a weird TikTok with Octagawa and Digimon characters and Monokuma, and it's very fun. It's a Monokuma Brian B, if you're on TikTok.
So now you hope to just never get sick of the character, otherwise you'll just have to make another account.
And it's really fun because now I've given like this other life to all these characters. You know what I mean? Like Monokuma and Octagawa, they do rap battles together, and they all sing songs. They do musical parodies. It's really weird. It's just like second alternate world for all these characters. It's cool.
So please forgive me. I've not seen all of your TikToks. So if you've done this, you can make me feel bad. Have you ever thought of being so meta to then also narrating your own TikToks as the Digimon Frontiers narrator voice you worked on?
Oh gosh, that's amazing. But I think I will do that now. That's awesome.
So we're like those few people, because it's like, how many people are ever like, you're not seeing the guy who did the announcers for Pokemon and Digimon,
right?
Like, oh yeah, that guy. Which is funny because you're going to hear him more than almost anybody without thinking about it.
Oh my gosh, that's so fun. That's a great idea. I've done so many weird ones. I've had Monokuma and Octagawa do all the the trends that are going on TikTok, like chasing the camera as it freezes in the frame. And I did a really cool thing. I re-recorded the final scene of Digimon Tamers.
Oh, really?
And I had the video playing above me, and I muted the audio, and I re-recorded the Takato voice doing the lines. It was really fun, really emotional, and just to see if I could do it,
So I gotta ask,
30
as
years
a
ago.
really big dumb Digimon man-child that is, has it been weird seeing Digimon kind of like, because it definitely had its peaks and valleys in terms of Western attention.
For sure.
I feel like over the last 5 years, it's just been weirdly spiking. Like I would never have thought we would have gotten a movie, let alone 5 movies, and now the return of that series. And then the funny thing is now, I feel like more than anything, I always hear people asking for Tamers to come back now.
Yeah.
So is that one of those weird ones of would you have thought after you were done doing Takato would be like, oh yeah, he'll probably come back in 10 years?
Well, it's funny because when I did Digimon, I had no exposure to anime at all. My exposure growing up was Speed Racer, and I wasn't watching anime when Digimon came out. I didn't even know what it was. Hadn't watched Pokemon, whatever. So I didn't really know what to expect when Season 3 ended. And then Season 4, as, Bokomon came right after for me, and then Season 5, Agumon 2.0. So I never really had that chance about thinking of things coming back because new things were always happening. Now, as the years have gone on and other Digimon have, come out, I certainly have wished that Digimon would return, the Digimon Tamers would return. I'm also a little not upset, but I haven't been in the Digimon world for any of the past series or even as a extra character,
I think
whatever.
it's so hard because they're so segmented in that sense of it's that one cast, because the original series cast is so tied to a lot of stuff in terms of Easter eggs or things that they want to do in terms of the media. 2 gets lucky, all the season 2 cast just get lumped in with the 1 sometimes.
Right.
But yeah, for me, what's really
different.
funny. Yeah, 3 I remember being a really big fan of because I was a big trading card fan. Weirdly enough, I'm the black sheep. I like 4 the most.
Is that right?
Frontier is actually my favorite.
So
for
funny.
whatever reason.
I hear that a lot, and yet back when it was happening, I don't remember there being that much.
No, it was because they were all so different.
Sleeper.
One was if you're big into cards, you're gonna like that. If you're big into people becoming monsters, it was all everyone different thing for. But yeah, I think it's one of those weird it'll be ebbs and flows of how it took almost 20 years for people to like the Star Wars prequel stuff.
It's true.
Whereas now we're seeing we're seeing all the Tamer stuff rise back up, which I would have never thought. Which, funnily enough, I feel is then becoming more popular because I don't know if you've ever had anyone come up to you with the Digimon trading card game.
The old one or the new?
The new one.
Yes,
so yeah,
I have.
The new one, I'm now that's becoming so much more popular, you feel they would think, oh hey, we have a show about cards.
Let's go, right? I can still play Takato. Someone actually gave me a Takato card yesterday at the con, which was really, really cool. I hadn't seen that yet. Takato merchandise is very difficult to come by. I think they made one little action figure. He was with a Guilmon or whatever. And I have 2 of those.
I remember it was a big deal even when they brought back the Digivice. Even that was
sure.
It was it'd been 15 years.
I think I've got 4 Digivice from back then. That I keep watching them go up on eBay. So
waiting, it's your NFT. You're just waiting for those. Then you can get the college fund ready for everybody.
Oh my gosh! But yeah, wouldn't it be great if it did come back? I'd love that.
I like to believe so, especially just because of how much everyone relies on nostalgia nowadays. I'm never surprised if anything comes back at this point.
It's very true. Right? There are no new ideas.
Although being a little bit more, I guess pessimistic would probably be the thing, but I think of this more in a good way. One of my favorite things about Danganronpa as a series is how that creative team after V3 was hey, that's the ending.
Yep.
And they left the company. And for you, I was curious, is it one of those weird things as someone who worked on that series, are you oh, that's cool that it ended? Because obviously, besides Decadence that just kind of came out, outside of just re-releasing the same 4 games, that's kind of it for it. So is it kind of a weird double-edged sort of, it's nice that it had an ending, but it would be fun to return to that world?
Well, for anyone that's watched anime or worked in anime or Hollywood and television, that there is no such thing as an ending.
No,
because if they want to make money, they can do it was all a dream. It can happen again.
Unless you're, until the day, the creative people, the only one I think of as truly safe is Back to the Future.
Yes,
that's
exactly.
the only one that's no, because everyone's still alive and everyone says no to that.
I know, but still, I've I have not yet been surprised by these remakes where, everyone dies, the world blows up. Oh, there's another world over here, So now it would be great. It would be great to come back as Monokuma. Who knows?
Do you have a favorite? Because I was talking with a bunch of friends, another black sheep of the series that all of my friends kind of agree upon is like our favorite performance from you isn't the trilogy. It's actually Ultra Despair Girls.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, well, because that one is such a weird game. It's very dark. It's unlike the rest of the series.
Oh, that's interesting. It's funny because I've played the games. I don't own the games. I've played the games, but I'm more familiar with the recording sessions than I am with the games. Do you know what I mean? Because that's more of my experience of my world.
100%.
So because the first two games were so long ago, 10 years plus or whatever, I'm more familiar and have more of a memory of the most recent game. Also, we just laughed so hard on that recording. I remember that there's... Someone must have told me this, because I wouldn't know enough about it, but someone told me that a lot of the stuff that we recorded was, like, too offensive to make it into the game. I'm like, how is that possible? Like
the amount of, like, because what sucks is, like, game bloopers aren't really a real thing,
right,
unless, like, someone, like, leaks them or whatever. And even one of the things that never really gets talked about is just unused material.
Correct.
That, like,
not bloopers and not,
just stuff you had to record that just might have been part of the Japanese thing but got cut eventually.
Correct.
Just because of the overall package.
There's tons of that.
So, like, it's always so funny, like, then when people will dig into files, like, something that you might not even be aware of is every Danganronpa game, you had recorded footage, or you would have recorded audio dialogue for a demo that maybe 100 people played.
Oh,
because
yeah.
all of the demos were specifically tailored and did not give away the story, so they thought, okay, well, it's a visual novel, we'll just change the text and the lines and everything. So it's one of those funny things of, like, if you weren't one of those weird people at a trade show or downloaded the one for V3 or something,
right,
that's just something that's totally lost to the winds. There's no one's ever going to really remember for it. So that and bloopers are always so funny of, like, I always wish that someone would just be like, all right, let's filter out all the stuff that'll get you fired,
right,
keep the funny stuff, and then leave it in there, because it would just be like such a, like,
and make $1 million.
Exactly.
I mean, sell it underground first and then release it wide. And oh my gosh.
That was kind of one of the things, like, back in the day, like, a lot of voice acting companies would do is they would come to conventions with, like, a blooper reel. No one had cell phones back then, so what are they going to do?
Right.
And it would
that's
like,
right.
They
would play them, right? Wouldn't they play them at, like, opening ceremonies or closing ceremonies? Yeah. I haven't been on many of those because I don't make mistakes. No, that's not true. But yeah, I know we did a couple for either Durarara or Naruto at a convention. They played a blooper reel that was really funny. But yeah, it's Wendy Lee and I just laughed so much on the last recording of Danganronpa. In fact, I would read ahead some of the lines as we were recording, and once I got to the line, I couldn't even read it because I was laughing so hard.
Do you have, because I'm sure you've seen such a weird age range of Danganronpa fans. So, like, for me, when I find someone is, like, under 17 and is a Danganronpa fan, I'm like, how did you get into this? Like, I'm aware it's such a dark series that I'm like, your parents probably have no idea what this teddy bear game is about, do you?
I'm sure they don't. And that's why, especially on my TikTok, like, I try to respect the property, obviously, but also I want my TikTok to be available to all ages, so I'm very careful with, you know what I mean? However, the games do not. The games do not discriminate. But I've seen a lot of people at the convention today and other conventions, really young people. So obviously it's brothers and sisters that are introducing them, or friends, or...
I have an old coworker, he introduced his, like, 14-year-old daughter to it.
Yikes.
And she loves it. She's just super into it. Like,
and he knew what it was.
Oh, yeah, he had known what it was. It was one of those things of, like, she was, like, watching a bunch of, like, murder mysteries.
So we need to call Child Protective Services,
exactly,
is what you're
yeah.
saying. Okay.
So it's just one of those so funny things of me, for, like, where I think of it as a more mature series, but then one of the funny things is the fan base, I feel, keeps getting younger and younger, just because it's maybe so popular, the characters are so zany, or whatever it is.
It's really true, because it does walk both sides of the line, I mean, the blood is pink and the characters are crazy, and Monokuma has that childlike fun voice, but he's so evil and he's a sadistic murderer. So it really does, it lends itself to, people that really like horror and killing and all that stuff, and people who like Teddy Ruxpin. No one here is going to know what Teddy Ruxpin is.
That is definitely not. Anytime I've ever thought anyone who listens to my stuff is going to be like, no one's going to understand this reference.
Build-A-Bear, how about that?
Yeah, there's like one person who's like, I get that reference.
It's okay, that's for you, whoever's listening.
We're also bringing up Decadence a little bit for it. I have a weird chip on my shoulder for that game. I was glad that they brought it to new platforms. The little new mini game mode they added sounded so much fun, but the big thing that would have made me actually want to play it is if all the voice actors had come back.
Yeah, so what did they do? Repurpose?
It's just all text and all of your everyone's just grunts and sound effects. No one's actually talking to the whole
because
thing.
That was actually a worry of mine when I heard about this coming out. I was in the trailer. My audio was in the trailer, right? But I hadn't worked on the game, so I'm like, well, they're either repurposing or they're doing what they did, or they just used me for the trailer and then they got someone else for the game, which sounded stupid. Yeah, but you never know.
Yeah, thankfully none of it was like recast for it, but it's like on the dumb business side, I get it. Bringing in people who probably haven't worked on this game in like 15, almost a decade or whatever, stuff like that, it'd be a huge pain in the butt, but it's also one of those things of, if the fan base gets this excited by, oh my god, this character's finally back,
they could have done it. We're all still working. We're all still in the industry. We can all.
No one's going to say no. There's no
one's going to say no, and it would be 2 hours of work, right? I think that was a real money-saving, money-making choice that they made. I believe so. Yeah, I'm not a fan of that. I didn't know that. I'm not a fan of that, but.
So you had mentioned one of the people you'd worked with. Were there any other kind of cast members you remember really like bouncing off with a lot with any of those other projects that like really stands out to you?
Well, none of us work together, especially for a video game where we're not in the same room. But I do know that it's Amanda Miller who plays Junko, right?
Yep.
This must have been for the first game, so this was a long time ago. They flew us to San Francisco for a big party on Nob Hill. I used to live in San Francisco. And it was a big party for all the Japanese executives, the American executives, and it was to launch the new video game in America. And so, gosh, we probably hadn't even seen it. We knew what we did in the studio, Amanda and I, and she and I had worked together on other video games, but it was really kind of cool. It was probably one of the first times that we had been flown somewhere as pseudo-celebrities. I'm doing air quotes right now. And so we had a blast, but as I remember, hardly anyone spoke English at the party.
Oh, yeah.
All Japanese, right? We had a translator or whatever, and we just had to kind of like say, hey, we're really excited to be here. I'm excited to be the voice of Monokuma, whatever. And then we drank and went home. I mean, it was really strange. It was a weird night.
It's kind of funny, yeah. Those don't normally happen like too much. It definitely was kind of a bigger thing probably back then for it. Actually, one of the other ones I was going to ask you for, when you started... I actually got into the series through the second game, not the first one. I was reviewing it. So no one wanted to review this weird visual novel on the Vita, and I got it for free like 2 months before. Yeah. And I remember I loved it so much immediately. And the way that the stories work, you can play 2 first, doesn't really matter. They're all self-contained. Yeah. I wrote back to NIS, and I was like, this is so great. Like, I'd beaten it. The game wasn't out yet. And I was like, I've got to play the first one. And they were like, oh, okay, well, you know what we should do? The second one's about to come out. Let's make the first game like practically like $10 or whatever for like 2 weeks or whatever beforehand. Nice. And I remember because like we were all just like talking about it, but we couldn't really talk about the game because it was out. So I remember before the second game had even come out, after reviewing it, I just marathoned the first one. And they were just like one of those so like funny, weird memories in my brain of like I get so hooked into them, especially because of how long like the court stuff would be. Because you're basically recording 5 movies in all of those games when you look at all the dialogue. Like one of my weirdest memories that stand in my head of I was playing V3 and I was so enwrapped in this court case. I was hanging out in college between classes that there was a school shooting incident that happened all around me that no one told me about while I was in the middle of this case.
Oh my gosh.
And it took the third police officer with an AK walking past me.
So you're true tunnel vision, right?
Yes.
This is what's happening to the youth of America. That's crazy. Sir, excuse me, the building is burning down. We're going to have to ask you. I'm almost done with the game.
They're just walking past me, and no one say anything. And I'm like, hey, what happened? It's like, oh, there's an active shooter around. But we don't know where he is.
Oh, my God.
All the rooms were locked down. You couldn't go to anywhere else.
That's terrifying. Where was that?
This was up in Kansas, where I live.
Oh, okay.
No one got shot. Just somebody saw somebody with a gun, but everyone ended into freak-out mode for it. But it was just so funny of, like, I was so wrapped into it. I was like, this is normal. Whatever. I'll go through this for it. So it just really is like a fun testament to it of like what an absolutely just like weird setup for it all.
Right.
Yeah, like
funny.
So for you though, as I was like kind of saying, since it released originally on the Vita, wasn't immediately kind of like that boom, big thing. Like, it's almost bigger now than when they were releasing.
Completely.
So for you, like, when did you kind of realize to yourself, oh, this is going to be a big thing, or this is a big thing? Like,
that's interesting. And these kinds of realizations only happen to me like at conventions, because
you're not going to Whole Foods and they're like, is that Monokuma?
Exactly right. I'm not ordering in like, I'll have a Whopper with cheese. So that's kind of it. Like Twitter, maybe, but mainly conventions when I see the fan base and stuff. And so, last couple years, definitely when I started TikTok, which was only like 6 months ago. But then the whole thing with Danganronpa, a decadence happened. So it really seems to be happening quickly. What do you think? Like, when do you think it started getting bigger?
I really feel like with V3, because that was them kind of firing on all synergy. Because it was not only that was V3, because the whole thing was we're doing V3. There was already books coming out, and we're doing the 2 animes at the same time.
Yeah.
So that kind of felt like if you were anywhere around, whether it be anime or video games, you were hearing about Danganronpa.
I do think I just remember that I haven't seen the anime, but I do think the anime has benefited me, and maybe the game has also benefited.
That's gonna have one of the most uneven receptions, by the way, to an anime. So, like, for me,
oh really?
Because the storytelling just doesn't work in a traditional, like, for adapting the first game into like a 12-episode series.
Yeah,
it's way too rushed. It actually cuts out a lot more stuff. You're missing a lot of like the personality for everybody. It's just very bang 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 bang. So it feels much like it's a good, like, everyone's doing a great job of what is there. They just needed a lot more time and everything.
Got it.
So the first show is a very sloppy thing. I don't normally recommend to people. But the 3 is very integral to the game. So it's very funny of, like, skip the first one, because the whole thing with 3, both shows are tied directly. So, because they're both named Danganronpa 3, but they're 2 different animes. One is a sequel to the first game. The other is a prequel to the second game.
Wow, that's weird.
So it's a huge mind F. And yeah, and even, like, how it ties into stuff with V3. It was one of those funny things of, like, it's a lot going on, but because it was all happening at the same time, anyone who was enjoying it, there was always people being like, oh, this is a great show, jump into the game, or oh, this is a great game, maybe jump into the show.
Right. Oh, that's interesting. I do know that because of that, because there was a considerable crossover, people got kind of like wonky about the Monokuma voice.
Oh yeah.
That was weird to people. People definitely took sides, which is fine.
If anything, we should have in hindsight, they should have been like, we need to just have both of you in a scene together to be aware of how dumb this is.
That would have been so funny. Yeah, but executives don't have sense of humor.
No,
so.
Yeah, it's always one of those funny things, especially because you guys are just taking whatever Japan's giving you.
Right.
For you though, I was actually curious because your take on Monokuma is very unique, even by comparison to not only Greg's but also the original Japanese one for it.
Yeah.
Did you have heavy direction with that, or was it like?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, it was my ideas and stuff, and then ultimately their choice. So they basically wanted me to kind of match the tone and the range of the woman that did the original Monokuma, but from a male perspective. So it's however high I could get and whatever ranges I could get as a guy, but still kind of like sounding the way that she sounded. So, and then we added, obviously, I don't speak Japanese, and so I didn't really understand that kind of humor that the original Monokuma has. If it is very sarcastic or whatever, I don't know.
It's that localizing those types of games are just such a Herculean effort.
Right.
So making them basically understandable is already a hard enough task, let alone making the jokes land and adapting them and then
localizing them, etc. So I think they did a great job at that, and then we really took it another step and made him really sarcastic and wry and sadistic and funny, and he's a great character. He's a great character.
So I'll try and wrap this up. I always like to ask this for voice actors of, like, especially when you have such a weird kind of filmography and everything for it.
Yes.
What are roles that you have a chip on your shoulder you don't get asked about more? Those are my favorite ones. I'm like, I gotta get asked about this one.
It's really funny. I mean, I'm really not that guy. Like, as long as people are asking, they're asking.
Not like you're against it, but it's like when someone calls you out, like, what's a role that someone's been like, oh, I love you in this, and you're like, that's a real fan. If you remember me from this.
Well, to be honest, anytime I do get someone that remembers Staccato, I kind of get excited because it was so long ago. 20 years ago? I don't know, 30 years ago? So that really still does get me excited, and it's the job that started my whole career. Like, that was my first gig. But I did a movie, before Takato for Nickelodeon called Globe Hunters. It was a musical, and I played Trevor the Parrot, who was raised in a science lab, so I did all these different... All I did was watch TV, so I did impressions and Jim Carrey and all this stuff. And it also starred Chaka Khan and Willem Dafoe. I mean, like, really weird.
I want you to know, I have very vivid memories of that movie.
Do you know it?
Oh no, I do.
You're a true fan.
I watched way too many of those Nickelodeon movies growing up for it, but I'm also a disturbingly big Willem Dafoe fan. So it's like, I gotta watch this guy's entire...
He was like the hunter or someone that was after the bear, the parrot, and the ape. Yeah, so anyway, that was my first thing, and when people do come up to me, and now you are one of them that knows that movie, I'm like, oh, you're either a true fan or you're just odd.
Yeah, something about the 90s just gave us all way too much free time for it.
Yeah, it's a cute movie. It's got great music. It was composed by John Kavanagh, who's won a couple Emmys for that. Eleanor, the Disney show, whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he does that, but...
So now what needs to happen is your next convention appearance, someone's going to find a VHS copy and have you sign it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it'd be so much fun. I need to make prints up of Trevor the Parrot, and they're like, what the heck is this?
Do you have anything that stands out in your mind of like a weird thing someone's brought for you to sign?
I do often get things, people bring me DVDs or video games that I am in that I don't remember. All the time.
The amount of times I've like talked to a like voice actor or just somebody in general, like, oh, it was so fun that you popped up in this for like 5 seconds. Like, I don't even remember.
Nope. I'm always like looking myself up on the International Movie Database to see like, oh yeah, you're right, I did do this. So I've gotten those a couple times, and they go way back, you know. So I don't know that they have them because they're fans of that, or that they're just looking for something really strange to bring to me. But either one is cool, you know. I'm
always so weird with autographs of like, I'm not the kind of person who's like, oh, you were in this game, I love this game, I'll wait you to sign the cover for it. I'm like one of those, like, I would like the director, like the writers, like I think of it more as like kind of like a thing for that, whereas like I would love you to sign like, oh, here's this one specific thing. Like, if I had, like, the Staccato card, that would be perfect.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
sign that. And, like, things like that that are, like, more tied to, like, a person as opposed to, like, an ensemble kind of thing.
Correct. Yeah, I get it.
So it's, like, all those different things. Because, like, my favorite are, like, when you'll have someone be like, oh, my God, you were, like, the third background extra in this movie. Can you sign this? Or, like, I don't know if this is adding to the worth, but if you're happy, I guess.
Well, speaking of me being in Howard the Duck, yes, I did do that.
So thank you so much for letting me talk to you and everything.
Thank you.
Besides your amazing TikTok, where do you want people to find you? Are you doing any other conventions coming up?
So yeah, I'll be at Evil Con, I think it's called, in Indiana in March. In April, I will be at Saluki Con, which is, I don't know where. I think it's in Southern Illinois. And then next month, I'll be in England at Anime and Gaming Con in London. And then online, Monokuma Brian B on TikTok and Instagram and Twitter at Brian Beacock.
Okay. And I mean, had you actually been to a Taiyou Con before? Or is this your first time?
I haven't, no.
What'd you think of it?
It was great. Everybody here is so nice. They treat us really well. A lot of people. I've been really busy and had a great time.
That's all. Yeah, this is kind of like one of my favorites because I grew up in this area of
Arizona.
Cool. I live in the Midwest now, but I still have family here, so it's really perfect to just come here, hang out with friends. A lot of people from California. This is like a 5-hour drive.
Exactly right.
So it works really, really well. But yeah, it was so great to get to meet with you, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.